From the library of the New York Stock Exchange at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution of global growth for over 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now at the NYSE and at ICE's 12 exchanges and 6 clearinghouses around the world. And now welcome inside the Ice House. Here's your host, Josh King of Intercontinental Exchange.
They call it the Tiger Effect. The stock of Nike, that's NYSE ticker symbol NKE, rose 4.9% in the days following the victory of Tiger Woods in April at the 2019 Masters at Augusta, his first major victory since 2008. According to some, the win that the 43-year-old, who helped to transform the professional business of golf starting a quarter century ago, boosted Nike's market cap. It was $149 billion that week, up from about $119 billion at the start of the year. It's since floated down to somewhere in the middle of the range, and as you're hearing this episode of Inside the Ice House just before the U.S. Open in Pebble Beach, it might tick up again in anticipation that maybe, just maybe, Tiger can win his 16th major. And then there's this. Apex Marketing Group, one of those firms that measure the value of media coverage, guessed that Nike earned $22.5 million worth of brand exposure just in Woods' final round on Sunday at Augusta. Come on, you know that swoosh prominent on the golfer's shirt, shoes, pants, and hat. Did you run out to Dick's Sporting Goods, that's NYSE's ticker symbol DKS, and buy a red mock turtleneck to pretend that you're Tiger rounding Amen Corner? You know you did. That's how it works. And how it works over at CBS, that's NYSE ticker symbol CBS. The ratings for the final round, which started early because of weather, were the highest for a morning round since 1986, when CBS started keeping those numbers. Tiger's resurgence is a boon, too, for the FedEx Cup, brought to you by, you guessed it, FedEx, NYSE ticker symbol FDX, which punctuates the 4 final tournaments in the season, culminating in Atlanta, the home of Intercontinental Exchange, at the Tour Championship at the famous East Lake Golf Club. The FedEx Cup was created back in 2007 to breathe new life into the moribund end of the season with a $10 million winner's prize, and Tiger was its first winner. He capped off that run with a win at East Lake, and then Tiger turned heads by winning it again last fall, signaling that Woods maybe, just maybe, on the road back. It was at East Lake a few years ago, in 2017, that I met Rich Lerner of the Golf Channel. Anyone who follows the game has been made smarter about it by Rich, a man with a deep sense of golf's history and a velvety voice to recite it, who grew up working at his father's driving range and miniature golf course in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Rich and I talked a lot back then about how Tiger's career was probably over, the residue of the personal and physical setbacks he'd faced starting in 2009, and how a new golden age of golf was beginning with a new generation of buttoned-down, incredibly fit, media-savvy professionals. Well, based on how this year has unfolded so far, it may just be back to the future. As the golfing world flies west to California for the U.S. Open in Pebble Beach, we're inside the Ice House with Rich Lerner, talking about golf, the game, its past, present, and future, and the business that surrounds it, right after this.
And now a word from Chip Bergh, CEO of Levi Strauss & Company, NYSE ticker LEVI.
There's no other brand in the world like Levi's. We're here today because of the dedication of the 15,000 employees that we have around the world. Growth is being driven across the company. Men's, women's, tops, bottoms, outerwear. Virtually every country in the world grew last year. Being associated with an institution that goes back further than Levi's is special. This is where this company deserves to be.
Our guest today, Rich Lerner of the Golf Channel, has packed his travel bags in Maitland, Florida, and is gracing us in New York City as part of the broadcast team in town to cover the PGA Championship at Bethpage Black out in Farmingdale in the middle of Long Island. Rich joined Golf Channel back in 1997 and has been a mainstay ever since, serving as a play-by-play host for the Golf Channel's PGA Tour tournament coverage and as lead host of the network's Live From programming, airing on-site from the game's biggest events. Rich, welcome to the New York Stock Exchange and welcome inside the Ice House.
Josh, thank you for having me. I just want to alert to all the listeners that if they do run out and buy that red mock turtleneck in hopes of looking like Tiger, they're really going to end up looking like Colin Montgomery.
You don't want to look like Colin in a red mock turtleneck.
I love Monty.
Your first visit to the NYSE?
It is, and it's exciting.
It's a big day on the floor of the NYSE. The IPO of Uber, that's NYSE ticker symbol UBER. Rich, a traveling man like you, a guy who needs to get out to courses all over the world at 0 dark 30 and is sometimes the last guy to leave. The population that supports a big, high-profile golf tournament have got to be power users of a service like Uber, putting those fleets of loaner cars that used to support tournaments out of business.
Uber's huge wherever you go now. My kids use it. I use it. Although on this day, when they had the IPO, I, of course, took a yellow cab down here. But I do think Uber has made the cab services better. There was a lot of frustration a few years ago. You'd get in a cab and you'd say, I'm going to Broad Street, corner of Wall Street and Broad. And they would turn around and say, where is that? And that would drive me nuts. Like, hey, I'm from out of town. You're the one who's supposed to know your city. Drive me crazy. I think it's made them a little bit better.
Let's rewind the process a bit for a guy like you coming to a city like New York, Rich. As you're on final approach toward New York City, the metropolis closest to Bethpage out on Long Island, a lot of flight paths take you over Allentown. You ever look down and find the old footprint of the old Dorneyville Golf Center?
Dorneyville Golf Center. Little history lesson. My father, rest in peace, Les Lerner, came out of the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. I was a smart guy, but like a lot of guys from that generation, the Les's and Abe's and Murray's, who were born to men named George and Sheldon and Samuel. They served in World War II and came out, and they could see what was going on in the country. People were ready to get on with enjoying their hard-won freedom. Leisure time was exploding. My father took up golf. He was working for his dad at Lerner's department store in Northampton, Pennsylvania, suburb at the time of Allentown. My father came through, or my grandfather, George, rest in peace, came through Ellis Island. So you sort of get a sense of that story.
That. Yep.
So my father was just a decent golfer. He had just sort of taken up the game, pretty good athlete, played some basketball at Penn as a freshman. And then he was driving back from a golf course in Stroudsburg, PA with his buddies, and they saw McGargle's Golf Center on the way home, and he thought, man, that looks like fun. That would be a good idea. People are getting into golf. So borrowed $10,000 from his father, and $90,000 later, the lights were on at what my father remembers as the first fully lighted cemetery in the United States. They struggled, and it was an 18-hole lighted par 3 that I don't think my father understood how good it was. He hired a guy to shape the land from Quakertown, Pennsylvania. He was not a renowned golf course architect, but it was a phenomenal sort of a linksy little par 3 that had holes that ranged from 40 to like 105 yards. Miniature golf and a driving range, the old-fashioned with the green dividers and the mats, and had about 30 hitting bays. But we were not a spot for low handicap golfers. We had hitters, we had boozers, we had people out for a good time. My father, in the early days, being a good businessman, he approached a burgeoning star from Western Pennsylvania by the name of Arnold Palmer, who had won the 1958 Masters. My dad had a great idea. Arnold will lend his name to this new venture.
Got to go for that deal.
And then we'll have a string of Arnold Palmer golf centers across the country. Arnold was a shrewd businessman in his own right. And when my father found out Arnold's asking price to lend his name to this new venture, Dorneyville Golf Center was born. Named for the little borough on the edge of an expanding city. Allentown, Pennsylvania. It was in the family for 35 years or so. The state eventually bought the land, leased it back to my father and his partner for a number of years. And today it looks like any other homogenized stretch of the United States. There's a Dunkin' Donuts and a Carrabba's where the 12th hole used to be. My three brothers and I worked there. Through our teenage years. I worked there into my early 20s. We did just about everything you could do, cutting greens, picking up cigarette butts, working the cash register, with tons of characters. We had a dirty old range pro who was our Yoda.
Would that be Ted Bickle or someone else?
No, that was Frank Stocky. And I once took a lesson from a renowned Golf Digest instructor. I was a young golfer of some promise, a Jewish Johnny Miller with a reverse C finish, 1975-76. And my parents sent me to this camp, and the famous teacher taught me, and I came back naturally because I was a head case and still am to this day, tied in knots, and I had a junior tournament coming up. And so I sheepishly went to Frank, who had nurtured me for the previous 5 years, and I said, Frank, I need you to look at my swing. And so we went to the driving range, and he has the unfiltered Camel dangling and the Zanzibar slacks and a cardigan sweater and a great tan because he used to sit in a lawn chair and sun himself when he wasn't working. And I start prattling. Frank, my spine angle, I don't really, my swing plane I didn't know a swing plane from an airplane. And he looked at me and he took a drag from his Camel and he said, hit the ball already, will you? And I was released from, excuse my language, I was released from all of my tension and away we went. And,
long and straight?
And yes, but then of course I went to the junior tournament down in Philadelphia and came back with my tail between my legs. I think I might have been a 4 or 5 handicap at the time and shot 91. And Frank's way of comforting me was to say, well, the lump come up. See, you got the apple come dowdy. But he was a legend. If you talk to any of my brothers, any of our countless friends who worked there, Frank Stocky is a legendary figure in our group.
I mean, for you and your brothers, though, Rich, would you have had it any other way? It's the kind of life that kids dream about. Dad owns a par 3 pitch and putt driving range, 18 holes of mini golf, the lights on Friday and Saturday night. Sounds like perfection to me.
It really was. I mean, we had kegs in the back. All right. Yeah, we did. As we got 16, 17 years old, occasionally we had a great pinball room with Donkey Kong and Galaga. You remember those games? Space Invaders, was that another one from back in the day? So we had this great pinball room, and for years we had a hot dog stand. If anybody's been through the Lehigh Valley, Yakko's Hot Dogs is a famous little joint with great chili dogs, and they had a stand for a little while at the driving range at Dorneyville Golf Center. But we had a soda machine naturally, and every now and then, 7-year-old little Johnny would come to the counter and he would say, I want to get a grape soda, but this came out. He was holding a Budweiser. We were young and full of it, but it was an incredible place to grow up and work. And that's where I learned the game, fell in love with the sport, and it got inside me in those years at Dorneyville.
So from Dorneyville, you're then in college at Temple when Caddyshack debuts on the scene. The year, I think, Rich, is 1980. And here's Chevy Chase as club pro Ty Webb at the Bushwood Country Club.
Just got to win that caddy tournament. I owe it to my folks to get that scholarship.
What do you want to go to college for, Danny?
I don't know.
Let me tell you a little story. I once knew a guy who could have been a great golfer. Could have gone pro. All I needed was a little time, some practice. Decided to go to college instead. Went for 4 years. He did pretty well. At the end of his 4 years, it was the last semester, he was kicked out. You know what for? He was night putting. Just putting at night. The 15-year-old daughter of the dean. Know who that guy was, Danny?
No.
Take one good guess.
Bob Hope.
No, that guy was Mitch Kumstein, my roommate. He's a good guy.
To what degree were you like Ty Webb? Did you have pro aspirations of your own?
No. I mean, again, I made my bones at a modest Jewish country club in between Allentown and Reading, battling guys like Abe and Sam and Milt. They were 8 handicaps who took it back to their hip and scraped it around in 81 until I finally broke through, I think at the age of 20, and won my first club title at the Berkeley Country Club. My greatest, most thrilling match would have been against the local furrier, Shim Benioff. Shim wore orthopedic shoes, leather, the lace going up the side. He was a 9. He was a nervous player, got it back ankle high, and then just jumped at the golf ball, hit a lot of skulls. But he made it work, in the way that guys figure out a way. He had me 4 down with 5 to play in the quarterfinals of the Berkeley Country Club Championship, and I made my move with a bogey at 14, a bogey at 15, winning holes with bogeys. And finally at 17, I hit it hard left in the trees. I punched out. He's right down the middle. He needs to bunt it up to this 300-yard par 4, make bogey, and he closes me out. He proceeded to blade one that went over the property and landed on the roof of the porn shop, which was adjacent to the club. There was an adult bookstore. I ended up beating Shim on the 19th hole, only to lose in the next round to Sam Blinderman, who sold women's undergarments wholesale. And Sam was about a foot shorter than me, and I think 40 years older than me at the time. So no, I didn't have any professional aspirations. I won a couple of club championships. I won a local amateur tournament. I played college golf at Lehigh before transferring to Temple. And that was really the extent of it. A lot of good times, though, in the game.
I was at Madison Square Garden last night, Rich. Billy Joel performed to a sold-out crowd on the night of his 70th birthday. Let's take a listen to one of his all-time hits.
Well, we're living here in Allentown, and they're closing all the factories down. Out in Bethlehem, they're killing time, filling out forms, standing in line. Well, our fathers fought the Second World War, spent their weekends on the Jersey Shore. Met our mothers in the USO, asked them to dance with them slow. And we're living here in Allentown.
A lot of old-timers like me are in the audience of this podcast, Rich. In blue-collar cities like Allentown and Bethlehem, do former miners, steelworkers, and then those players that you just talked about still get the sticks out on Sunday, or is golf fading in the country's interior? What's the state of the game for duffers like me?
That's a good question. Flat, I guess flat is good these days. I don't have the raw numbers right now. Allentown Municipal, I know, is doing reasonably well. They've sunk a little money into it. That's sort of a great municipal golf course right in the heart of town. Bethlehem Municipal's hanging in. I played a lot of golf up at what used to be Twin Lakes, Iron Maiden, I think they call it. Iron Maiden. No. Iron Lakes, it's called. Look, I've talked about this with one of my brothers. Like, why do we love Allentown as much as we do? The view of Allentown is still not that far from what Billy Joel wrote about. It's changed quite a bit. Bethlehem Steel is a casino now, which I think is.
Says all you need to know.
It says all you need to know about America at this point. Why do we love Allentown so much? It's where we're from. It's a town of great corner bars. It's a town that likes wrestling, but both freestyle wrestling and professional wrestling, and I respect that. It's sort of hardcore in that way. I like Allentown. It's just where I'm from. So look, to answer your question.
But there's so many Allentowns around. I mean, it's like, what is golf between the coasts and all the municipal links that are in all these cities that, have some big private courses on the periphery, but, the people like your dad and your brothers who used to play.
I think actually there's room now, and I think the munis are likely going to be okay because in the short term, it's hard to predict what's going to happen down the road when our kids turn 40, 50, will they play golf? I suspect they probably will, because you slow down as you get older, and you're not playing hoops, although I'm still dumb enough to be playing. Golf is a nice alternative. But from a cost standpoint, people are not shelling out 30, 40 grand to belong to a club, and that would be a modest club, I guess.
Yeah.
Some are. And you go pay your 60, 70 bucks and you can play your round. I don't think people are playing as much. So if you figure I want to play once a month or twice a month, I'll pay my 60. If I want to go to a higher end public course, I'll pay 90, 100, whatever it is. And you're not sunk with the costs that are attached to belonging to a private club.
And now to shift from the public game to the pro game, you've got one of the game's biggest events next week at Bethpage Black. We're going to talk a lot about Tiger a little bit later in the conversation, but if you were to take a snapshot of where the professional tour stands right now, what would you see in the frame?
It's pretty healthy. They just signed a brand new deal with FedEx, $600 million over 10 years to be the umbrella sponsor. More money. They have the big cat back, which will help on every front, financially foremost. Good young players. I don't think there's one single dynamic star. I think there are some stars, but there's no transcendent figure. I think they all suffer in comparison to Tiger Woods because I thought we were out of it, but we're not. We're back in it. 25 years of one of the greatest, most electric athletes in the history of American sport. But you have some good young talent, but nobody that really moves the needle. But again, McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, likable, fresh-faced stars. Nobody gets in too much trouble. They represent their brands well. Solid. I think it's a solid picture.
So let's talk about the Tiger in the room. When I last saw you before Xander Schauffele won at Eastlake in September 17, you were expressing a kind of golfing obituary for Tiger Woods, and you weren't alone in your opinion. Let's listen.
Church every week he was going to up his back and his knees, and they did, but then they're trying to equate it to
Gatorade is now dropping the golfer. This is the third major company to leave Tiger.
Prestigious Swiss watchmaker Tag Heuer confirmed it would not renew its contract.
The former #1 player in the world has yet to win a PGA Tour event since the infidelity scandal erupted in 2009.
Yeah, do I need to pile on and start wagging my hypocritical finger at him? My pasty freckled.
But it seems like time isn't the issue here. His body is.
Then he was like in legendary can't touch me status, and then people love in terms of the story, loved the fall from grace.
Age is against him. His timetable of winning is what's closing.
So then, Rich, from a year after you and I had that conversation, he would win the very tournament at Eastlake. What began the turnaround for him?
Healthy. He got healthy. And when I say he got healthy, I don't mean he simply got healthy physically, that he had his back repaired, a fourth back surgery. That was a big piece of it. But I think he got healthy emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. He had an issue with pain management. When he was pulled over in the middle of the night on a road in South Florida and cited for a DUI, I felt like we were closer to a tragic ending than we were to winning at Eastlake. So he went and got help. He doesn't talk much about that. That's certainly his choice. But it's safe to assume that that was number one in the steps that he had to take in order to come back. It's to get healthy of mind, spirit, and then body. Now they're linked. If he had tremendous pain and discomfort with his back, he's taken some painkillers, can't get right, you get hooked. I mean, that's a common story in our country. So I think that's what started the comeback. And then, he just has a level of talent that nobody has ever approached in the history of the sport. He has a gift for this game. I think we all agree. And it would have been tragic had that gift vanished, had that gift been wasted. And so the gift has been restored and recovered, selfishly as a reporter, and I think as fans, we all just wanted to see him do what he can do like no one else. What he did for 10 years. And he was the most reliably mind-blowing performer for a decade and a little bit that I'd ever seen. He didn't just win. He blew your mind. And it was almost all the time. So restoring the gift for us, and I think personally for Tiger, to be able to show his children who he is at his best. Any parent would understand how important that is. Here's who your pop is. Look, this is what I can do. His kids are old enough now. We saw that at the Masters to appreciate that.
So then, Rich, let's go to Augusta, to before the Masters got underway, to the pre-tournament press conference with Tiger Woods, because he had performed well the prior year, and everyone is sort of full of hope and expectation. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen in the succeeding 6 days. So there he's sitting with the head of the tournament, the backdrop of Amen Corner behind him, all the press in front of him. And here's what he has to say.
Last year at this time, you were still in that process of kind of seeing how it was going to go the full year and whatnot. And obviously you went on to that latter part of your success. In what ways are your expectations different maybe this week at Augusta than they were last year when you were still feeling things out a little bit?
Well, yeah, and well, as I was alluding to earlier, is that I feel like I can win. I've proven that I can do it, and I put myself there with a chance to win the last two major championships of the year last year, and I was right there, and just needed to have a couple more things go my way and not throw away a couple shots here and there, which I was able to do at Eastlake. And I just feel like that I've improved a lot in the past about 12, 14 months, but more than anything, I've just proven to myself that I can play at this level again. And I've worked my way back into one of the players that can win events.
So that was before the first hole, Rich. Did you think he could win? How did this story unfold before your eyes?
Yes, I thought he could win. Based on his recent performances at the major championships. Held the lead briefly Sunday, early on the backside at the Open Championship at Carnoustie before Francesco Molinari won. He shot 64 in the final round of the PGA Championship at Belle Rive. Brooks Koepka ended up winning, but there was enough evidence to suggest that Tiger wasn't bullshitting people. It was right there. Winning the Masters, though, that's still, because he hadn't won a major in 11 years, it still seemed maybe, I don't know, a bridge too far. It still seemed like it was going to be, I won't say surprising, but it was going to be epic nonetheless. It was not a foregone conclusion the way it had been, 10, 12 years ago. I thought long and hard about it after he won. How had I assessed Tiger through the years, and had I made any mistakes in my judgments of Tiger? And I thought, going forward, I'm going to refrain best as I can from making judgments about great performers. I don't understand them. They exist on a different plane. I just don't. I could no sooner tell you what makes Tiger tick than I could tell you, how Mozart made his music. He's a freak. He's a genius. Whatever Tiger needed to do through the years to get himself to that position where he could shoot 65 and win 5 tournaments, win 6 in a row, win 4 majors in a row. Who the hell knows? And typically those people have dark stretches, dark periods in their lives. And Tiger had such an unusual upbringing. He was famous when he was 4 or 5 years old. He was on the Mike Douglas show. He had a father who drove him, who built him for this. We know he had some sort of issues, right? Well, he had some issues. He had a hole inside of him, as many of us do. And he tried to fill it. I think what's nice about this new Tiger, and this is not a prerequisite for me, because I enjoyed Tiger when he was in bad ass. He was a carnivore for a long time. He fed, he needed to eat, and he ate well. And he dined out on Phil Mickelson and Sergio Garcia and Ernie Els, and now he's snacking on this new generation a little bit right now. But the public seems to generally like its athletes to be great, but also to be gracious and grateful. And that's sort of the new Tiger. He's somewhat complicated, as many of these great performers tend to be, but it's great to have him back. And we're not done yet. I thought the story was over, and it's not. It looks like 18, while a long shot is worth considering. 18 being
majors.
18 majors. That's worth considering one more time.
Talking, Rich, about snacking on a new generation, Francesco Molinari is still sort of part of the bridge generation, maybe even Tiger's generation, and there can only be one winner at Augusta. Going into the final round, you had another guy like Molinari with a 2-shot lead, 49 straight holes without a bogey until he came on number 12 on Sunday. What's the psychology that makes such a consistent player unravel so suddenly?
Say unravel, I would say it was one shot that sort of triggered it. And it is the most beguiling little shot in the sport. It's 151, 2 yards. It's also it's the prettiest little graveyard in golf is what it is, the 12th hole at Augusta National. And Koepka lost it right there, although he bounced back with an eagle at the very next hole. Finau essentially lost it right there. They made the tactical mistake that so many have made through the years to go at the flag, although I think Molinari just mishit it. But Tiger understands, as Nicklaus did, that you take it over sort of the middle left side of that bunker. You don't think about making two. You don't hunt for that flagstick in that moment in time. And Tiger, it appeared, had the aura and even a hint of intimidation back in that one moment as he waited for the guys to play their third shots after they hit it in Rays Creek and after they dropped. There's a shot of Tiger standing on the back of the green near his golf ball with his arms folded, looking, peering, staring, dead-eyed at the other guys who at that moment in time didn't look very strong. And you got the sense, tactical, clinical, hardcore Tiger is back in that one moment in time right there at number 12. But I love Molinari. I'm a huge fan. I've watched him play a lot of golf, and amazing transformation the last couple of years.
This younger generation, this new golden age of golf that you and I have talked about in the past, players like Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler, the other star players in the clubhouse, on the record, Rich, they've all been complimentary in their admiration of Tiger's comeback. But in the players' lounge, do you think they grouse that he sucks up too much oxygen in the room, that he's had his time and it's their turn?
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think there's still an element of hero worship. This was their guy. And so I think they still look at him with a sense of awe. I think those of us in the media who've thought about it, watch this, what I hear is we'd like to see one of these guys say, when asked, do you think Tiger will get to Nicklaus's record of 18 majors? We'd like to hear one of these guys stand up and say, not over my dead body, if I have anything to say about it. I mean, that's kind of good for the drama.
Right.
They tend to be politically correct. Tiger's great. It's wonderful to have him back. I was on record previously as saying I didn't think they were intimidated, and that's a strong word, but what happened at the Masters gave me pause just slightly. Augusta's a great golf course for Tiger. He understands it in a way that very few do. Let's see what happens going forward here. If he goes on another run, then we can revisit that.
When we come back with Rich Lerner of the Golf Channel, we look back at the U.S. Open, which Rich is covering at Pebble Beach, the Great American Tournament, its past, present, and future, and the British Open beyond at Royal Portrush. That's right, after this.
And now a word from Charles Harrington, Chairman and CEO of Parsons, NYSE ticker PSN.
We offer technology, digitally enabled solutions to the defense, intelligence, and critical security markets. We see a lot of growth and opportunity in cyber and intelligence and geospatial intelligence, as well as solving network problems for critical infrastructure. It feels great for Parsons to be a newly traded public company once again. When I joined the company in 1982, we were publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and here we are 35 years later, publicly traded once again.
Back now with my friend Rich Lerner of the Golf Channel. Before the break, our conversation spanned from Dorneyville Golf Center in Allentown to the Masters at Augusta. Rich, what's your method of preparation and study before you arrive on site to cover a golf tournament?
We have a great research unit at the Golf Channel. They provide us with spiral-bound books and everything from golf course history to location, where we are, 15 miles from the Atlantic Ocean, whatever it may be, 17 miles from downtown Manhattan, history of the golf course, who won there. So we pour ourselves into that research packet. Oftentimes I'll talk to the professional at the club. I'll look back at my old files from a previous year. If we've been at this golf course before, I'll revisit those notes. Pebble Beach, got plenty of stuff. I was just at Pebble Beach, so I was able to get sort of more current sense of where the golf course is. I was doing a feature story that'll air the week of the U.S. Open. It was a hard-hitting feature on Lefty and Charlie, the two border collies that belong to the superintendent, Jack Holt, out there.
Hard-hitting.
Yes, and that asked the piercing and penetrating questions of the subjects. Who's a good girl? Should we have a rub? Why don't we have a rub right now? It's actually one of the really enjoyable stories I've had the chance to report. I can't wait to put it together and write it.
I mean, your essays and your pieces that are done outside of just play-by-play and live from your ability to go back and be a real storyteller has to be one of a great passion for you.
It is. It occupies so many legs on so many trips, and doesn't matter where I'm at. I love to sink myself into those little pieces. And that's the other part of the preparation is I'll sit many times and just think. No books, no research manuals. I'll just try to think and pull out a legal pad or my phone. You can do it on your phone. And, what do I feel is the first question I ask. What do I feel about this point in time in golf? Where are we in our sport? What do I think? And then what do I know? Sort of those three questions. And I'll spray thoughts and ideas, and then I'll cobble something together, and then I typically write a couple of teases to get live from started and get people excited and make them feel something, and then I'll write an essay that airs on Wednesday night, try to capture some sort of idea, feeling where we are in the sport, and then go from there. And typically I'll have one sort of meatier 5-6 minute feature that we run during those major championship weeks.
What's your trick to surviving the grind of this life? The practice rounds, 4 rounds of play, and then packing up and staying on the road for weeks on end.
How do I survive? You have to get in the gym once in a while. You can't. You run hard late at night. You get run over early in the morning. When I first started, we did a couple hours a day, whatever it was. Now it's, sometimes the telecast, if I'm doing a live event, sometimes the telecasts are 5-6 hours. It can be a grind, but then again, we're just talking about golf. Somebody said to me the other day, said, Rich, detailing my travel schedule, they said, Rich, you must have a hard job. And I said, well, let's consider that for a moment. Here's what I do. Thursday through Sunday, I sit in a box, I watch a television screen, and I say, let's go to 15. Let's go to 17. Now to 4. Back to 7, 9, 12, 18. I'm a glorified bingo announcer is really what I am. I will be calling action in the Sunrise Senior Center in Hallandale, Florida in 5 years. So we're lucky to do what we do. But yes, anybody who's been on the road, whatever your business is, you have to take care. You have to try to eat reasonably well because it's wine and burgers and steaks every night if you want it. So you just have to you have to be careful.
Talking about the Hallandale Senior Center in Sunrise, Florida, even when you're not on the road, you're still deeply immersed in the game. Earlier this week, you were in Ocala helping support Mackenzie's Moment for the Ronald McDonald Charities in North Central Florida. You tweet that it's the beauty of golf made 4 new friends. Rich, 5 hours out on the links is still one of the best ways to really connect with other people.
No doubt in my mind. I've not encountered any other experience. Now, granted, I'm in the sport. I'm sure there are other things you can do to really connect with people, but it is such a good way to do it. You ride along with people. You talk to them.
You learn these stories.
You
like
learn their
Mackenzie.
stories. You have kids. I mean, the people I played with were brothers from Indiana, the Puckett boys, 2 of 8. So I got into their story that your father made no more than $100 a week, and yet the one guy, Frankie, ended up in the newspaper business and did very well. His brother's an educator. It was like a snapshot of America, and I'm inquisitive. It's like being on a talk show. If you're in a round of golf with me, I tend to ask questions, but also I love to do shtick and love to tell stories, and you can cut it loose out on a golf course.
So now we come to the U.S. Open. First played 1895, 124 years ago. One of the most famous Opens surely was played in my backyard at the Country Club in Brookline in 1913. Let's have a listen.
It was a house in which a boy had grown up, and from his second-floor bedroom window, he could see the course, where as a caddy, he had learned the sport and the honor of the game. Francis Ouimet, 20 years old, an amateur, a salesman at a sporting goods store, had no chance against the 2 professionals, of course. But he was too young, or maybe too innocent, to know it. He was the unlikeliest of challengers. That was one reason he ended up with a 10-year-old boy as his caddy. But through 4 rounds, Eddie Lowry's faith never wavered, he believed, and steady Francis hit the shots. On the morning of the playoff, Ouimet's friends begged him to take an older, more experienced caddy, but he stayed loyal to the boy, and they won, together in the rain. 6,000 people turning the course to mud as first Ray fell away at 15, then Varden at 17, and only Ouimet was left.
Rich, so many years, so many highlights.
That's a good one.
What are your favorite U.S. Open moments?
Wow.
You weren't at 1913, I assume.
I would have loved to have written the 1913 U.S. Open. That's one of the great upsets of the last century in any sport, is Francis Ouimet, and did a lot to spark the popularity of golf. Favorite U.S. Opens? Okay, in my lifetime, Tiger Woods in 2000 at Pebble Beach. Never in the history of golf, I can safely say that, and maybe, just throw this out there, maybe in any sport, has the gap between the best in that sport and everybody else been wider than it was at that moment in time, and then for that stretch of 4, 5, 6, 7 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. Tiger Woods won by 15 shots. Tom Watson calls it the greatest performance in the history of the sport. Tiger Woods was standing on the cliffs above Stillwater Cove of the Monterey Peninsula, and everyone else, Mickelson and Garcia and Els, they were in a rowboat near Australia. It wasn't close, and it stayed that way for a pretty long time. 2008, we're back to Tiger. Torrey Pines. That was probably his sort of most mythic major championship win, because he beat an army on one leg. What can't he do? And we know now, in retrospect, that was a turning point. A year and change later, his life would change, and the sport would change when the scandal hit. 2013 at Merion, sort of in my backyard. It was outside of Philadelphia. That was Mickelson's 6th U.S. Open runner-up. All the history at Merion with Bobby Jones, having won there in his Grand Slam year of 1930. Dramatic. Justin Rose ultimately winning. And then, I may be missing some. U.S. Opens have unfortunately been just a series of sort of train wrecks in recent years, unfortunately.
We talked a lot about the Masters and Augusta, which is fundamentally the same course, albeit tweaked and adjusted year to year. The British Open is often these exotic links courses.
Mm-hmm.
The U.S. Open runs the gamut all over the country. For the average listener, what should they be looking at Pebble Beach? The way the greens are manicured, the way the roughs are cut, and other aspects that make a U.S. Open different from other tournaments?
Well, the U.S. Open in the earlier years was golf's most stringent test. It was a climb up Mount Everest. It was brutal. It was a thorough examination. That was the phrase we always heard. It's a thorough examination, as if you're going to your proctologist. And it was about, it wasn't even that pleasant. You'd rather go to your proctologist than play, say, Winged Foot in 1974, what they called a massacre at Winged Foot. So the U.S. Open always wanted to test you psychologically as much as anything. Can you withstand pain and punishment? Then, 10 to 15 years ago, they began to change their philosophy just a little bit. They wanted to see players hit a greater variety of shots. So they gave you what they call graduated rough, and they widened out the fairways a little bit because today's players with the modern equipment, not quite as straight. I don't need to get into the reasons why here. It would take too much time. So Pebble Beach, small greens, about as small as you can get. The fairways will be pinched in. They will be quite narrow. They're going to test the players on their accuracy. You're going to have to hit the ball straight. It's not a long golf course. It's a tactical golf course. I think it does set up well for someone like Tiger Woods. Tiger won't have to hit his driver all that much at Pebble Beach. He can hit that stinger 3-wood or a low iron and put the ball in play. And then once you're in play, if you're in the right spot, then it becomes a test of your iron play. And there is no better iron player in the world right now than Tiger Woods because, again, the greens are so small. 8, 9, and 10, maybe the greatest 3-hole stretch, at least for raw drop-dead beauty in the world, right along the water. Number 7 is about as cool a par 3 as you'll ever see. You just hit a little sand wedge that kisses the clouds. Now, if the winds come in, guys have hit 6-iron in. It's 106, 7, 10 yards wherever they put the tee box. 6 is a great par 5 up the hill. That's where Tiger hit a famous shot in 2000, the 7-iron out of the thick rough that at the time it felt like no one else could hit. Pebble is, I don't love to use the word iconic, but it's iconic. I mean, it is when you think about beautiful golf courses, you think immediately of Pebble Beach.
And on the greens themselves, that clip that we played from 1913, 10-year-old Eddie Lowry. Eddie wouldn't quit on Francis Ouimet, and Ouimet wouldn't quit on Eddie. Tiger's caddy at Augusta was Joe LaCava. What's the relationship between the modern-day champion and the modern-day champion caddy?
The caddy's become a much more sort of professionalized job. It pays well. The demands are, I think, greater. With the increase in pay and the higher purses now, caddies are out there with their books charting every last yard of a golf course. How far is it to the front of that bunker? What's the carry? What's the number? Where's the wind? They have to have every last bit of information. Their players demand it. So I do think at times the caddies are given too much credit. I think we've seen evidence that while they're not easily replaceable, and I think it varies from player to player, some guys are more reliant than others on their particular caddy. I do think we in the media tend to overstate their value. I think it's about comfort level. I think Joey LaCava is a pro's pro in the ranks of the caddy. There's some other guys of that ilk, Jimmy Johnson. They've been out there a long time. They know what they're doing. They know the golf courses. They know how to handle. They call them, you ask a caddy, he'll say, my man played well today. It's sort of an odd bit, but they say, my man played well today. He's hitting it well. Could Tiger win with you as his caddy? I suspect he probably could. But while I say that, I don't mean to minimize how good Joe LaCava is at his job. And most of these guys are very good at their jobs. And I don't think it's as easy as maybe it appears to be. You do have to put in the work. You do have to know your craft. And you have to have it all together nowadays.
1 month from now, no matter how things turn out at Pebble Beach, the action shifts across the pond to Northern Ireland for the Open Championships. Royal Portrush will be home to the tournament for the first time since 1951, the first time it's been held outside of Scotland or England since then, when Max Faulkner won the Claret Jug.
The Open Golf Championship, fought out at Royal Portrush, County Antrim, ended in a British win. Max Faulkner, 34-year-old unattached professional, was unperturbed by the weather or the strong competition he was up against. It's reported that he'd backed himself to win, and win he certainly did, with an aggregate of 285. Here's his last putt. Two strokes better than Cerda of Argentina, Faulkner's was a fine performance, well worthy of trophy and congratulations.
So, Rich, 2018, nothing like 1951. Francesco Molinari is the defending champion. Can he stay steady through 4 rounds, or will hometown boy Rory McIlroy be poised to make a strong run, set up the British for us, even a month hence?
All eyes will be on Rory. Northern Ireland, exotic locale, Royal Portrush. I think a lot of golfers in the audience will have been there. Special place. And given the turmoil in Northern Ireland through the years and the difficulties, challenges of bringing this championship to Portrush, there's a tremendous amount of excitement behind this particular Open. Rory will be front and center because he's from Northern Ireland. And it was Graham McDowell who actually sort of kicked off this run of Northern Irish success at the 2010 U.S. Open, oddly enough, at Pebble Beach. And then came Darren Clarke winning the 2011 Open. And then obviously Rory McIlroy with his 4 major championships. So Portrush is a wonderful golf course. It's linksy, it feels different, it looks different, and this year with that move to Northern Ireland and that sort of added political backdrop, that historical backdrop, this will be one worth watching for sure.
You and I got to know each other amid the conclusion of the 2017 season and the annual excitement around the FedEx Cup. Mm-hmm. Has the FedEx Cup's mission to stabilize interest in golf amid the arrival of pro and college football seasons endured?
It's better than it used to be. It's not at the level of the major championships or the Players or the Ryder Cup. But typically what used to happen before the FedEx Cup arrived, before the playoffs came into existence, was that once the PGA Championship, which had been the last major, once that was finished, fans just left the sport in droves. I mean, in terms of watching it on television or consuming it however they were. And they went and started watching football. So along comes FedEx and the playoffs, and what they found is that they're not getting bang for their buck with the playoffs in September, when people are really hyped and super excited for the start of football season, college and pro. It's a behemoth, as you know. You can't beat them in the ratings. But so what's happened in the last couple of years is FedEx made a substantial commitment to the PGA Tour. My understanding is $600 million over 10 years. Enormous prize money now. Bonuses of up to $15 million for the winner. They have a Wyndham Rewards for the regular season. We've been instructed by the tour, pushed, nudged, to begin to focus more on FedEx in our coverage, in our weekly broadcast, versus, say, the official World Golf Ranking. Mm-hmm. So you'll hear it come out, you'll say, Dustin Johnson, number 2 in the current FedEx Cup standings. He's off to a great start with his 2 wins, versus Dustin Johnson, number 1 in the world.
FedEx is paying for that.
Bingo. They want as many impressions as they can get. And it's fascinating because I understand where the tour is coming from. I really do. As a business, they're sort of tired of the broadcasters pushing these other properties which they don't own during their telecast. So if it's, say, the AT&T Byron Nelson Championship, that's a regular PGA Tour stop. If the announcers go in and are only talking about the PGA Championship coming up, or the world rankings, or the Ryder Cup, or the British Open, the tour is sitting there saying, wait a minute, this is our product right now. This is our property. We want you pushing the FedEx Cup. So look at it this way. The 5 most valuable properties in the game typically have been the 4 majors, Masters, PGA Championship, US Open, and the Open, and the Ryder Cup. PGA Tour doesn't own a single one of those entities. Not one. And yet, who's responsible for the riches that come pouring in at every one of those events? Their talent. And they've had it. They've had it. That's why they introduced the Players. That's why they pushed that. That's their flagship event. That's why they introduced the President's Cup. They own it. And now they want the FedEx Cup pushed, and that's why the PGA Championship moved to May. The PGA Tour wanted those dominoes to fall. They wanted the month of August. Mm-hmm. They wanted their FedEx Cup playoffs to be away from NFL football. And so for that to happen, the PGA of America had to move.
We lost Arnold Palmer in 2016 at the age of 87. Gary Player is now 83. Jack Nicklaus is 79. I want to hear a little bit of admiration for what Arnie represented during his life.
He came along at a time when in the cultural zeitgeist of America, the setting was right. Golf was a sleepy country club game, and then along comes this muscular, tilting Pennsylvanian with a corkscrew swing and a handsome grimace, and suddenly he was an irresistible figure.
Arnold Daniel Palmer, the classic American sports icon, was a man of the people.
Arnold was another Walter Hagen. He smoked cigarettes, he'd have a whiskey, he smashed the ball all over the place, he'd hold long putts, he was daring do.
As we wrap up our conversation, Rich, before the U.S. Open gets underway at Pebble Beach, Palmer was the son of a steelworker turned golf pro from Pennsylvania. Talk to us about the giants of the game and whether the decades ahead will crown and embrace a new giant to carry on the tradition that people like Arnie, Jack, and Gary established.
I think every generation has its giants, right? We love our myths. We love our heroes. That's why you do what you do, and that's why I'm in business. Is to put the halo around whomever is in our midst at that time. So yeah, there will be new heroes, and they'll reveal themselves in due time, and they'll have gone through hardships somewhere along the line. You would think. Arnold was from a different era. We know that. I mean, Arnold was, from the Mad Men 1960s, a little brittle cream and a little dabble, do you? I always say about Arnold, he was known as the King. He didn't particularly like that moniker. I always felt he was the best friend the game has ever known. And what today's players and future generations, I think, could learn from Arnold best as they can. It is a different time with social media and sort of gotcha journalism at times, and people looking to take you down in a way that I don't think Arnold ever encountered in the 60s and the 70s. What they could learn from Arnold is to try to make a connection with people and to best as you can enjoy the people. That was Arnold's gift, was he loved to be Arnold Palmer. He loved to be out with the people. To his dying day, loved it. And I've not seen that. This modern fame is uncomfortable. I think McIlroy struggled with it. Tiger obviously struggled with it. I think Jordan Spieth's struggling with it a little bit. constantly being scrutinized, analyzed, asked to expound on the state of your game, your state of mind, people looking at your every move. Arnold had no problem with it. He always looked you in the eye. If he was signing 30 autographs, there was always a moment. He just would pause. He'd look those people in the eye as if he knew you or met your uncle or something. He's had that remarkable gift to make a connection and take the time. Famously writing thank you letters, congratulatory letters after people won. If it's not natural for someone, then you're not going to be able to do that. But just that's a good lesson. Try to make that connection. Try to enjoy the ride. Look, I think Adam Silver, we're veering a little bit here. Adam Silver touched on it. This idea that he felt like today's players were lonely, Commissioner Basketball were isolated, and so I guess the larger point is that it is a much different time for the athletes, and can they make a connection and then reap those benefits? That would be a question worth pondering as we move through the next decade or so.
On that note, Richard, we'll let you get back in your Uber and head out to the course to do what you do so well. Follow Rich Lerner on Twitter, and that's at NYSE ticker symbol TWTR. At Rich Lerner GC, and of course, wherever the little white ball is getting smacked down the fairway as covered by the Golf Channel. Good luck at Pebble Beach, Royal Portrush, and wherever the tour takes you. Thanks for joining us.
Josh, this was a real pleasure.
That's our conversation for this week. Our guest was the Golf Channel's Rich Lerner. If you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes so other folks know where to find us. And if you've got a comment or a question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, email us at icehouse@theice.com or tweet at us at icehousepodcast. Our show was produced by Pete Ash with production assistance from Ken Abel and Ian Wolfe. I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the Library of the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, or a recommendation of any security or trading practice. Some portions of the preceding conversation may have been edited for the purpose of length or clarity.